To start off our discussion, the term investment migration, it's been around and it's helped a lot of governments and countries raise significant funds. Can you define investment migration for us?
Well, it certainly helps countries to attract foreign direct investment, which can be very significant. It's a very interesting tool to attract significant foreign direct investment. So this is in essence what investment migration is. Investment migration is completely global. If you look at the region, let's say around Sri Lanka, which is of interest here, you would attract actually people from all over the world, pretty global. So this is a very interesting opportunity for the country that I would love to see happening, of course. Investment migration can significantly help, let's say, to put Sri Lanka on the map. And that is what I would be great opportunity for Sri Lanka.
With global mobility on the rise, we're seeing investment migration becoming a very hot topic. That's our topic of conversation today with the chairman of Henley and Partners, Dr. Kälin. Stay tuned.
Some bonds give more returns, get more security and more interest on your fixed deposits from Sri Lanka's largest finance company, LMDtv Finance.
Hello and welcome to LMDtv. The topic of conversation today is investment migration, and with us we have the chairman of Henley and Partners, Dr. Kälin. Dr. Kälin, it's very nice to have you on our show.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
To start off our discussion, the term investment migration, it's been around and it's helped a lot of governments and countries raise significant funds. However, to get our audience a little acquainted with the term, can you define investment migration for us?
Well, it certainly helps countries to attract foreign direct investment, which can be very significant. But it also helps the individuals who are seeking these possibilities for alternative residence or sometimes even citizenship. And so this is actually quite important to bring together investors on one hand, international investors, and countries on the other hand. Investors seeking alternatives, alternative residence, sometimes even citizenship, and they're seeking second home bases. They are looking to more securely invest because, of course, if you have a residence permit in a country, you can be more sure of your investments and so on. They also have the possibility to go to these countries anytime rather than just on a short-term visa, so also partly or even full-time live there. So there's a lot of benefits for these individuals and families, but also for the countries who attract these global investors. It's a very interesting tool to attract significant foreign direct investment. But this is in essence what investment migration is.
Can we talk a little bit about the history of investment migration? How did it come to be?
Yeah, of course. I mean, this goes back a very long time. So it goes back to Roman times, 2000 years, where even before that, even Greeks, but mostly the Romans did that in a very large scale to basically offer residence or citizenship to foreigners that contributed to the Roman Empire. And of course, you're referring to more recently, where you're quite right that we have a pioneering role in this in the last 2 decades. We reformed these programs in many ways. We expanded that in many ways. It's not something that we invented, but we made it much more widespread. Now there's over 100 countries worldwide that operate investment migration programs of some form, and maybe about 50 that are really actively and successfully operating these.
Dr. Kälin, if I ask you, from a global standpoint, who would you describe as the typical individual who would, seek citizenship and residence by investment? And how exactly should countries be targeting these individuals?
Yeah, that depends, however, a lot on which region in the world you look at. So investment migration is completely global, and you have a completely different point of view in, let's say, North America or in Africa or in Europe or in Asia or East Asia or Southeast Asia. So if you look at the region, let's say around Sri Lanka, which is of interest here, you would attract actually people from all over the world. It's pretty global, certainly a lot from around Asia as well, but also from Middle East, from Europe, who are looking to Sri Lanka as a second home. So if you look at it from that point of view, the motivations and the people who come there are very different. Let's say in North America or in Europe. So for instance, in Europe, European residence programs, they are mostly interesting for people who seek access to the EU to travel to, that have otherwise maybe a visa requirement, or who have also a second residence in a European country. So it's different. So the Schengen area is very attractive for people from a travel point of view. This would be less so in Sri Lanka, because you can generally travel to Sri Lanka quite easily and go on holidays, but that's not what people would want there. I think in Sri Lanka, people would want to have a second home, to have the security of being able to be there as long as they want, and secure their investment.
And if I ask you, does the industry on which the investment is based on, does it play a role?
That depends a lot on the program. So you have a range of possibilities. Very often, these programs, they are linked to some kind of real estate investment. So for instance, in European countries, you have Portugal is probably quite well known for its residence by investment program. Mostly it used to be real estate. Now it is more investment funds. Then Spain, the same. In Greece, people buy property, holiday homes or main homes, and they obtain a residence permit. In Sri Lanka, I would say it would probably be more interesting to look at infrastructure, climate related programs that would help the country rather than specific real estate related, because this you already have in some areas of Sri Lanka, as far as I know, and we have observed. So in Sri Lanka, it's probably better to have it a more target, if you were to do this, to have a more targeted investment program that, let's say, supports climate-related development programs, for instance, to improve irrigation systems or things like that. And so essentially, this is also the interesting thing, with these programs, you can, as a government, you can basically channel the investment into those geographic areas or sectors of the economy where you need the investment. This is very attractive for a country, because you can do regional investment development or sectoral development. And that is a very interesting policy tool.
Dr. Kälin, can you share with us some successful and maybe not so successful case studies of investment migration globally?
Well, there are more not successful programs than successful programs. And it's very easy to make it not successful. To give you an example, the Netherlands has now closed its program after 10 years. I think they did not even have a handful of applicants. And that's because the Netherlands, the requirements that the Netherlands put in place were just very unattractive. So if you make it too complicated or too high investment requirements, or the tax situation is not interesting, or there can be some element that just does not make it interesting for investors. And then you just do not have many applicants. Like in the Netherlands, they had hardly, I think they didn't even have 5 applicants in 10 years. And then you have programs that are highly successful. So for instance, the US EB5 program is certainly one. The Malta residence by investment and also the citizenship by investment program is one of the most successful worldwide. But also if you look in the region, Thailand, who we advised as well. So we had many years a contract with the Thailand government where we helped to globally position their residence program. And once we got involved, the program became very successful. So Thailand had this program before, this Thailand Elite program. And then you could see actually, there's a very nice chart that I like very nicely. It goes like this, the numbers, and then we got involved, and then it goes up. So, Thailand is a very good example of a very successful program in Asia. And there is no reason why Sri Lanka could not emulate the success of, for example, Thailand.
And what would you say are the most significant trends prevailing in investment migration today?
Yeah, I mean, globally, what you see is a constant expansion of this business, of this sector. So on one hand, the people who seek such alternative residence and citizenship, they increase constantly. And also, of course, with the global volatility that you see, and also after this COVID, and many other factors, climate related, other factors that make it much more a need for people to have alternatives to their home country. Then, on the other hand, countries, they have realized much more how interesting this is to attract foreign direct investment through investment migration programs. So to make it attractive for individuals and families to invest and then thereby gain a residence permit. This is something that countries now realize all over the world, big countries, small countries, and are increasingly offering this. So the competition on that side is also increasing. There's more and more countries offering really attractive possibilities for residents.
It's time to take a very short break now, but we'll soon be back to talk more about investment migration.
What makes a truly awesome insurance company? Is it the skills to manage big numbers and big responsibilities? Well, that's definitely part of it. But there's more. It's the people. They're awesome. Super passionate about looking out for others and putting in their time for people's finances. It's not just the people. It's how we do things that's awesome. From being trendsetters of the industry to being connectors or inventors. It's about well-being and how we achieve it. Our teams hustle non-stop to meet the needs of the people. That's why we're on the rise. But it's not just about how we do things either. It's about how we improve things. Helping our clients thrive in a world that's full of awesome goals to achieve. Making the maximum out of the minimum. But wait, there's more to it. There's one last thing that truly makes an insurance company awesome. It's that we care about our people and our customers. All of this combined, it's been a pretty awesome year. And we're excited for tomorrow.
Display your brand message on digital screens at prime locations. The largest digital advertising network in Sri Lanka. Emerging Media.
Welcome back to the show. We're in conversation with the chairman of Henley and Partners, Dr. Kälin. Dr. Kälin, you mentioned in one of your previous responses that Sri Lanka should be looking more at climate-related investment migration programs that will, help the country. Is this a trend that you're seeing in other parts of the world as well?
Yeah, I think this is coming more and more. And of course, Sri Lanka is a member of the Climate Vulnerable Forum, and it has already a climate prosperity plan with many different projects that are identified for climate-related investments that are being sought. And with such an investment program for investors seeking residence, this could be very well combined actually with the climate prosperity plans, so that some important projects that are important, significant for the country, could be, let's say, qualifying for investment on such a program, and thereby you could channel investments to those projects that are really a priority for the country. So that's what I would think would make a lot of sense in Sri Lanka.
If we take investment migration, it's a very regulated space with a lot of legal tick boxes. What are the most common gaps that you see in countries seeking migrating investors when we look at it from a legal point of view?
Well, it is actually surprisingly not so much regulated in the sense that there is, of course, a legal framework and there's regulations around these programs, but then usually a lot of people promoting that, and that is also part of the issues that you have all sorts of people doing all sorts of things. I think the gap in that sense is often there isn't enough control of the country over how it is being promoted. That goes all the way to, in every business, you have people to do things properly and people to do things not so kosher and, maybe promoting something that is not quite correct. And so it's quite important to have legislation in place to also prevent that, to really have only, proper professional firms involved. And there is a international association called the Investment Migration Council, which is an organization that is, at least to some extent, implementing standards in the sector. There are certain codes of ethics and professional conduct that are being promoted that would probably make sense to adapt by a country as being part of regulations, etc., etc. But this is also what our firm is doing. So we help countries to create the framework, the regulatory framework for such programs to operate properly so that there are as little gaps as possible.
Diversification is an important aspect of wealth management. And, we always say that investors avoid putting all their eggs into one basket. Can you elaborate how diversification impacts investment migration programs?
Well, I would have two answers to that. One is I always like to actually compare investment migration to wealth management in that sense that, like you say, you would normally diversify your assets. You don't just buy one stock or only gold or only one asset class. You would diversify a bit. And likewise for individuals globally, it's quite important actually, those that are international, to diversify their residence and citizenship options. It's a good idea for people to not be dependent on one country and not just be resident in one country, because you have more options, you have more business opportunities, education, other opportunities if you have yourself and your family, based in several different jurisdictions, or at least have these options. This optionality has become very important. Besides, also the ability to travel, as we could see in COVID. You could, even if you had visa-free access for short term, normally this was all curtailed, blocked, and only you could travel if you had actually a residence permit or citizenship in those countries you wanted to go to. So if, for instance, you have a second home, let's say in Sri Lanka, and there is another COVID, you can only go there if you are a resident or a citizen. So it's actually quite important if you have a second home somewhere to have a residence permit at least. So this diversification is actually quite similar, but people only now realize how important that is, similar like a wealth management, that you need to diversify. And the second answer to this, question, how does this relate to wealth management, is of course in the international wealth management field. So all private banks, investment managers, and so on, they are increasingly looking for their clients to, include in their planning these kind of solutions. So it goes beyond the pure financial planning, the pure investments, or financial investments, but to include maybe some element of planning that has to do with residence and citizenship. It can sometimes even be combined in that in some countries, the investments that are required to do, particularly in property or some funds, like now in Portugal, for instance, you can buy, a public fund, and that can even be part of your wealth management portfolio, and at the same time give you a residence permit in Portugal. So this is actually quite interesting. You can combine it even in your wealth planning from that point of view.
Asia is a very lucrative market for investors to focus on. What, Dr. Kälin, would you say is the approach that countries such as Sri Lanka take to be more attractive to investors compared to the rest of the world?
Well, first of all, I would say Asia is generally, attractive compared to other parts of the world, and Asia is certainly on the rise on a whole as a region. And I would say the future is Asian, as one of my friends, Farah Khanna in Singapore, said a few times. I think I very much subscribe to that. The future is very much Asian. But if you look within Asia, there is a large range of different countries, different regions that have obviously very different situations. So if you look, let's say, at Myanmar or Singapore, they are very different, even though they're quite close geographically. And so if you look at, let's see again, Sri Lanka, if you look at Sri Lanka, I think actually after the troubles in recent decades, most recently now, hopefully there is a time where things are calm enough that there can be really all the benefits of this now new environment be reaped for the country. And Sri Lanka is in a very interesting position, in my opinion. It's a very beautiful country. It has a very interesting and great history, and its geographic location, its strategic location is very attractive. And so, therefore, I would say in Sri Lanka, you could do a lot with investment migration, with making it attractive to bring global investors to Sri Lanka to have a base there. And so overall within Asia, Asia, I think will grow, will be very successful in the future. I think it's the century of Asia. But within that, I think Sri Lanka can position itself very well because of its position, because of its geographic position, but also as a country, the way it is perceived, the way what it can do. It could be a very, very good base for a lot of people to have at least a part-time home there, to do certain investments there, to maybe even move there in the future. So this is a very interesting opportunity for the country that I would love to see happening, of course. We have helped many countries to benefit from certain trends. So this is also a trend, so the Asian rise is a global trend that will just accelerate. And the question is how the individual countries in Asia will benefit from that. And I think this is something where like investment migration can significantly help, let's say, to put Sri Lanka on the map. And that is what I would be very much be very happy to see. I would very much like to see that. I think that's a great opportunity for Sri Lanka.
We always talk of improvements and programs and initiatives that are needed by governments to attract investors. But when we look at the picture, at ground level, how should it change in countries who are seeking to attract investors via migration?
The single most important factor for prosperity in any country is not the political system, or there's a lot of things people think are very important. But the most important thing that is important is the rule of law, the security of the legal system, that you can enforce laws, that it is fair, there's a fair system. And then derived from that come all the other things like infrastructure, other things that the country needs to do. But the most important thing I tell every government in the world they need to ensure is there is an efficient judiciary, there is a rule of law, there is no corruption. You need to keep a handle on that. And that is, of course, a big challenge. So, but if the country can move towards that there is a better rule of law environment, there is security for investors when you invest in the country, that you don't need to fear just irrational government decisions or courts that are biased or things like that. I think that's one of the most important things that investors are looking for. And if you can create an environment where there is a good rule of law based society, a good rule of law based economy, this is the basis for everything else.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Dr. Kälin. I'm all out of questions, and thank you. You made it sound so simple when I'm sure it's more complicated than this, but you made it sound
yes, and like everything in life, it's in the details. So indeed, there's a lot to do, and we will see. Certainly, we stand ready to to see what can be done, how we can help as well in Sri Lanka going forward, what there could be. Sri Lanka does have already a residence program currently. It's just not that attractive. So hopefully this can be improved and the overall environment can be improved, like we just said. And then I see a very bright future there. Yeah.
We've been talking with the chairman of Henley and Partners, Dr. Christian Kälin. Dr. Kälin, it was lovely having you on our show. Thank you very much for that insightful conversation.
Thank you for inviting me.
And thank you to all our viewers for joining us. Until next time, take care.
Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you for watching and stay safe.